Since Ryan Day took over as Ohio State's head coach in 2019, he's made it an emphasis to keep Ohio State's best players home. And for the most part, he's done that with guys like Jack Sawyer and TJ Hicks and Sonny Styles and on down the list here. But every so often, you're going to run into a player where that idea just doesn't apply. They've just decided that they don't want to stay home. And that's what's happened here in this 2025 class, regardless of the fact that Ohio State's put together a pretty good secondary class to go with. I'm Stephen Means, that's Andrew Gillis, and this is a Buckeye Talk YouTube. Check out Buckeye Talk, our full versions, wherever you find podcasts, and get the text 614-350-3315. Andrew, the number one safety in the corner, lives in Shaker Heights as the number 19 overall player, and he's headed to Oregon. How big of a deal is that for Ohio State to lose that guy to a team who is now in the Big Ten?
Yeah, it's a big deal. McNutt, and number 19 overall player, number one safety, number 2 player in the state of Ohio. It's Tavian St. Clair, number 1 player in the state, and then it's Trey McNutt. Like that's the level of player that we're talking about, right? Like, he is a really, really talented football player, and he is somebody that Ohio State was looking at for a very long time, and Ohio State would have taken in this class for, they 100% wanted him. And I think when he announced his commitment date, he announced his commitment date a couple of weeks ago, and when he announced that it was going to be July 19th, I think you kind of could read the writing on the wall that it was not going to be Ohio State. That was a recruitment that Ohio State wanted to kick into the fall. They wanted to get him for an official visit, and they still might. Look, recruiting is never over in 2024 and 2025. Like, these schools are not just going to back off because of a verbal commitment. That's not the way that this works. Ohio State's not going to back off of trying to get McNutt. They're not going to back off trying to get Justin Hill. Other schools are not going to back off trying to get some of Ohio State's players to flip. That's just the way that this works. So you never want to say it's over unless a player says it's over, I'm shutting it down. But this is a big deal because Ohio State had been trying to kick this down the road. They have 3 safeties in the class. They have Fahim Delane, the borderline 5-star, the high 4-star player. You have Deshaun Stewart, the safety out of New Jersey. And then you have Cody Haddad, the safety out of the also of the Cleveland area. And they wanted him to be the 4th. They wanted McNutt to be the 4th. And I think you look at Ohio State's safety room, in 2024, they're going to be elite. I think they arguably have the best safety room in the country, and they have Caleb Downs and Latham Ransom. Hard to find a better pair than that. 2025, you're going to have Caleb Downs and somebody else. They've got a couple of different options there. That safety room is still going to be really good in 2025, if for no other reason than you have Caleb Downs. 2026 is where you start to see maybe the cracks in the wall of what could be for Ohio State safety room. And that's where McNutt would fill in. That's where you would get a Fahim Delane. And I think a couple of months ago, it wouldn't have been crazy to just say 2024, you got this group, 2025, you got Caleb Downs and whoever's the best. And then maybe they're both gone after 2025. And then you're playing Trey McNutt and you're playing Fahim Delane as sophomores and as second-year players. And there's your safety room in 2026. And that would have been an elite safety room. Those are guys with great athletic profiles and great backgrounds and great recruiting profiles. And now that's not going to happen. So big deal for Ohio State and a really unique recruitment for a kid who is from the Cleveland area, who felt all along like, we said it at the top, feels like Ohio State always gets these kids. They didn't. And it's an interesting kind of look at where things are headed for Ohio State, how this is going to impact Ohio State, because you have a kid in your backyard who's a player that you absolutely wanted, who is going to another school. It's going to be weird saying Oregon's in the Big Ten for a very long time, but Oregon is in the Big Ten, and this is not the last that Ohio State will see of Trey McNutt.
How does Ohio State respond to this? Are there any, was this it? Is you have the 3 guys that you have in this class and you're trying to top that off with Trey McNutt over the top? Or are there other options that maybe mitigate the fact that even though they're going to continue to recruit him through Sunday, I understand that, but are there other options on the board to maybe pivot to as well, just in case Trey McNutt is completely locked in a way where we get to November and he's talking the way Devin Sanchez talks about being Ohio State Buckeye?
Yeah, one of the guys that I look at is Messiah Delhomme. He's a player out of Virginia. I think when we did our class projections, I think I actually projected him to be in Ohio State's class, because I think for a while it looked as if this recruitment for Ohio State was not trending in the right direction. It looked as if Ohio State was kind of slipping on this a little bit. Not slipping on this a little bit, but it looked like they were slipping behind, I should say. because I don't want to make this sound like Ohio State necessarily did anything wrong. I don't think that this is somebody screwed up at the Woody and they've lost, Trey McNutt. I don't think that that's the case. I just think sometimes you lose a recruit to a really good program, to a program who, go look at the last couple of recruiting rankings. They're building something really special out in Eugene. And I just think sometimes you lose a race, and it's notable that it just happens to be an Ohio kid. So I don't think Ohio State did anything wrong here, but I think Ohio State pivots probably to Messiah Delhomme. I think they push for him. He's a top 200 player. He was on campus for an OV. He's deciding between a couple DMV schools, or I guess DC, Maryland, Virginia, loosely, because Virginia Tech is in that group. Virginia's in that group. Maryland is in that group. He's from Newport News down in Virginia. So it's basically, can Ohio State convince this kid to leave the general area of which he grew up? We'll see. I wonder how much they're going to push for him. I wonder how they're going to map that with how much they think they can push for Trey McNutt, maybe try to get him on campus for a visit, maybe try and flip that recruitment. But they want 4. And I don't think it's crazy to see why. I just kind of said it a little bit ago. You see the numbers and the way they're kind of shaking out. Ohio State's kind of low on safeties as it is right now. Like, you would think that they would like to have more bodies at safety right now. And then you're going to be losing Lathan Ransom. You never know with the transfer portal what that might bring. You need numbers. You need bodies. You need talent, obviously, but you also need bodies, and I think they needed 4. So I would expect a Delhomme push, and we'll see what that means for McNutt if Delhomme commits, and I think that would tell you maybe where Ohio State thinks that they're standing in the Trey McNutt decision, even as we get into the fall.
There's good reason to believe that even with this decision, Trey McNutt will probably take a visit to Ohio State in the fall, and so we'll see where that goes. I think this is the 3rd year in a row where Ohio State's gotten into the midsummer months feeling like, man, I wish I had more time with the nation's top safety. Obviously, it was Caleb Downs, who ended up picking Alabama in the 2023 class, KJ Bolden, who ends up at Florida State. I think it actually ended up at Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, in the 2024 class. And now you've got Trey McNutt committing to Oregon in the 2025 class. Caleb Downs did end up taking that visit in the fall. He came to Ohio State-Michigan game, but still stuck with Alabama. But hey, what do you know? Nick Saban retires, and now Caleb Downs is the Buckeye. Who knows what's going to happen with Trey McNutt? Maybe as they get into the fall, this can flip and they can convince that kid to stay home. But I think the reason this one hurts a little bit more than the Caleb Downs and the KJ Bolden one hurt was simply because this is a kid in your backyard, and you've seen this story before. If you remember in the 2018 class, Ohio State was in on Nicholas Petit-Frere and Jackson Carman as the top 2 tackles in the country, one of which was from Ohio and one of which was from Florida. And if someone would have told you, hey, Ohio State's only going to get one of these 2, you probably would have thought Jackson Carman at that time. Carman ends up at Clemson. Nicholas Petit-Frere ends up at Ohio State. Carman wins a national championship as a freshman at Clemson, and then he's the starting offensive lineman for Clemson over the next couple of years. That even beats Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl the following year. And then Ohio State gets to get back in 2020 in the Sugar Bowl. With Trey McNutt, it might be that tenfold because Oregon's in your conference. And so not only are you going to maybe get regular season games against them, that's a team you'll probably be seeing in the Big Ten championship game a lot, and then maybe on the playoff games along the way.
I just wanted to add in real quick. Ohio State plays Oregon in 26 and 27. So you're gonna see Trey McNutt. You're gonna see a lot of other really talented players that Oregon's bringing in, and I think you mentioned it. This is a team that you would expect to contend for a Big Ten championship every year. This is a team that is recruiting at that level where you would expect to see Trey McNutt and other guys like that. You would expect to see them down the line in maybe a playoff situation. So, that I think that it's not just that you lose a Trey McNutt to another elite level program. Like when you lost Justin Hill, there's a couple other things that go into that, but he's going to Alabama, and the only time you would ever see Alabama is in the college football playoff. You are directly now helping, I guess, or Trey McNutt is now directly helping someone that you will be considering or comparing yourself to for the next few years. And that includes in October, that includes potentially in December, that includes in 25, 26, 27, and 28. So this is interesting because, again, you can go to a national school, but now, as we know in college football recruiting, national schools can be in the Big Ten in California and in Oregon and in Washington and in Pennsylvania and in Ohio and in Michigan.
It's a tough loss. We'll see how this continues to play out because I'm sure Ohio State will continue to recruit this kid, Trey McNutt, the number 19 player, the top safety in the country from Shaker, Ohio. Shaker Heights High School in Cleveland, Ohio, excuse me, picks the Ducks. The Ducks now the number 4 class in the country behind Ohio State, who still has the top class in the country in Alabama and Georgia, following up behind them. Get the text 614-350-3315. That's the first place we went before we put this video up. We texted out that news, and we'll be sending out plenty of texts on this very big-time loss for Ohio State, even if it feels like Ohio State didn't do anything necessarily wrong in this situation, just like Oregon didn't necessarily pull a kid out of Ohio as much as that kid was already ready to leave Ohio, and Oregon just convinced him to come be a Duck. Ohio, get the text 614-350-3315. I'm Stephen Means. That's Andrew Gillis, and that was a short version of Buckeye Talk.